Hi, good evening, everyone. 大家好，谢谢收看，是不是这样子？
也可以。
谢谢收看我们的现播。Is it correct?
没错，没错。
I really wanted to do this, say something in Chinese because this is my first time doing live with Michelle, who can understand English and Chinese and Japanese. And yeah, I just wanted to do this. So welcome, everyone. Hi, if you can see us, please let us know by commenting where you're accessing from tonight. And thank you, everyone, for watching our live show. Good evening to you all.
Good
So
evening,
hope it's
everyone. Thank you for joining us.
yeah, hope it's broadcasting. And anyway, so I would like to welcome everyone. And this is tada, our first. Oh, Rai is here. Hi, thank you for coming. Yeah, so this is our first of few more session of this intercultural trainers session for us. Like we are have this big passion about intercultural communication and how to improve the world by knowing more people from different cultural background. And yeah, very excited to be here. So welcome, Michelle. How are you?
I'm great. It's a beautiful spring day here in Taipei, Taiwan. And I'm really happy to be here and share more about intercultural development and communication, and to let people understand a little bit more about our backgrounds, and also would love to share more about other people's backgrounds. So thank you so much for suggesting this live session.
It is like I'm so excited. And yes, so Michelle is based in Taipei, Taiwan, and I'm based in here, ta-da, Brisbane, Australia. So
Down under.
yeah, down under. And but a good thing is really we met a few months ago, right,
Yes,
Michelle?
that's right. On LinkedIn.
Yes, this is the place to meet, isn't it?
Yes, indeed.
So we do have a lot of things, have in common, right, Michelle?
Yeah,
Would you like to introduce yourself?
sure. Yeah, okay. So I'm Michelle, and I was born in the US. When I was about 7, my family and I moved to London for my dad's work. And then shortly after that, we went to Cape Town, South Africa, which is a really beautiful place. I highly recommend it if anyone wants to take a vacation, Cape Town. And that's where my mom is from. So I finished my secondary schooling there, and then continued on back to the US in Boston. And then there's my Australia connection, Melbourne. So
Hmm.
by the time that I had sort of finished my education, I really had this feeling for, wow, there's so many interesting people in the world doing fascinating things, which sort of sparked my interest in my long-term love, which was Asian philosophy and health and history. So I moved to Japan, which is where,
Yeah.
yeah, where you're originally from. And after Japan, I spent some time in India, and then finally in 2007, I moved to the beautiful island of Taiwan, which is where your mom's from, right? So we have all these
Yes.
common connections. Yeah. And I have been working with the East and the West on developing intercultural skills. And I also really feel strongly about the skill connection of emotional intelligence. So we do a lot of work with teams both here and abroad, just, finding basically working on communication skills and how to find more win-win situations. So that's what I'm about. This is where I am, and really, really happy to have more conversations with you, Ray. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm so excited to have you too. And like you mentioned, we do have so many things in common. And like you mentioned, I'm originally from Tokyo, Japan, and my mother is from Taiwan, and my father is from Japan. So I have this two different cultural upbringing, and so yeah. And then I lived and worked in both east and west. So for me, I studied and worked and lived in US and Taiwan, Thailand, UK, and now I'm in Australia. So, we do have, it's quite rare for me to have someone who speaks Japanese and Chinese and English. So, 3个语言. This is quite awesome, isn't it, Michelle? So,
It
yeah.
is, but I must admit my Japanese is like just a little bit. Like
Mm,
I did try to speak it when I was there, but I
mm.
find that the more that I study Chinese, the worse my Japanese gets.
わかります。とてもわかりますよ。That's like my Chinese. Now my Chinese is like
Okay.
a number 3, and
Yeah.
either Japanese or English is my top 2 languages. you know.
I got it. Yeah.
Uh, but anyway, so yeah, this session is going to be quite, short. We will be covering what leadership skills are needed for the future of work. And before we move on to the main topic, I thought it would be good to, because we both are intercultural trainer, and it would be good to find out why we are here or how we started. Shall we?
Yes. So how would you answer that question? What would you say is what it means to you?
Right. Well, let's ask audience, have you? So are you either intercultural trainer and you're watching, hey, me too, I'm also intercultural trainer, or what is intercultural trainer to begin with? Because it's quite rare
Mm.
job, Michelle.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
you don't really meet that many intercultural trainers. So I would like to know if you're watching on archive or on live, let me know, have you met intercultural trainer in your life before us? But yeah, it's to me it's so rare to find someone like you. We can talk about similar passion and intercultural trainer. There's so many different words to begin with. There's cross-cultural trainer, intercultural trainer. Any other words? Occupation?
Yeah, like global
Anyone?
global competence skills.
Mm,
Yeah. Um,
yeah.
yeah, the US often sometimes, sorry about that. We'll talk about diversity, inclusion.
Right.
So yeah, I feel like there are many terms that
Mm,
are under this umbrella. Yes.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's also, yeah, depends where you want to, bring, or what's your goal really, to bring your
Hmm.
delegates or team, and where you want them to be. And that's how we can help, in terms of our passion and sharing the knowledge. So yeah, so to answer your question, intercultural trainer, to me, how do I answer to this? Well, I do find, because I grew up, in Japan with my, mother's Taiwanese culture background, I always had this third person point of view, saying, oh,
Hmm.
okay, so Japanese culture is like this, and this is
Hmm.
Taiwanese culture. But I lived in
Hmm.
Japan, so I always have to be aware of these two different culture. So
Yeah.
it's quite normal for me to talk about culture, and
Hmm.
I didn't think I can get a job like this is my dream job, because I always wanted to use my knowledge and experience and help other people. So yeah, that, to me, I met someone when I was doing my MBA, and that person she's from Canada, and she was my first intercultural trainer I met in my life. And I didn't know, wow, there's a job like that. that's so awesome. I want to be like you. So that's my, initial motivation to become intercultural trainer. How about you, Michelle?
Yeah, I fell into it and started doing it even before I knew it was a job.
Wow.
Because
Okay.
yeah, because I've been involved with corporate training and working with a lot of Taiwanese professionals for many years now. And I found that there was a missing link because a lot of people in Taiwan are very focused on developing perfect language skills. They think that the
Mm,
key to international success is through being able to communicate. In this case, currently the international language is English. So being
mm,
able to communicate very, fluently and smoothly without any nervousness. But over the years, as time went by, I realized that there was a different element, which was an awareness of what is, in terms of my Taiwanese background, what are the cultural expectations that will frame how I deliver a message, whether it's written or spoken, or whether
mm,
it's verbal or nonverbal. And then from there, I started to realize that I did need to incorporate this cross cultural awareness to have some kind of bridge, not necessarily between Taiwan and one country, but just to have a bridge between this understanding of intercultural communication. So from there, I was just kind of doing it on my own. And then finally I realized, wow, this is actually like a thing you can go back and study. So I went back and I studied. I got my certification. I connected with people from all over the world doing this. And I realized that there was actually, this profession. And now I'm not only working with people in Taiwan, but also abroad.
mm,
And the further I go into it, the more I actually realize that it actually transcends national boundaries. It's not just like about, oh, I'm from Taiwan or I'm from Japan, I'm from the US, I'm from New Zealand. It's also a lot of other things. For example, generational differences or sort of like career types, and
mm.
also emotions and how to express, what in which countries is it all right to express emotions, in which countries is it not, or which environments it is or isn't. So I just find it so fascinating. It's like a career, it's like a job that you always continue learning, and every session, every workshop you do with other people, they learn a lot, you learn a
Yeah.
lot, and it kind of like takes you to a different place every time. So I just think it's
Mm.
really cool. I love it.
Yeah, I love it. I love the
Yeah.
conversation like this. And, because I think it's so closed. I don't know. It's because I normally talk to Japanese people or locally, maybe in Australia, and I still get this. I never heard that kind of job. Wow, what do you do? So it's really interesting and love sharing the stories like this. And yeah, I do agree. I recently just finished the university program, doing global skills project. And yeah, it's like you mentioned, even it's that people from same country, you do have different, ideas and values, and you have to work with people with different, yeah, cultural background. Either
Mhm.
you're male, female, totally have different point of view, right? And so
Mhm.
that's why diversity, inclusion, and all these things are, to me, okay, we do have lots of different names to it, like cross-cultural, intercultural, and but it's just like the world is going towards like, like the same. Like now we're doing this live streaming, and I also recently did, you can do so many things these days compared to before, more than
Yes.
before, right? So
Yes.
yeah, I just feel really passionate about this topic in general.
Yeah, but I think like what you're mentioning is kind of tying into since we transitioned from this COVID-19
Mm,
environment, everything is sort of very hybrid, and it is possible to interact with and work with or train
mm,
online with people from any time zone, right? But as a result of that, I think intercultural awareness, and this ties into leadership skills, is even more important from before, because previously what was happening a lot in business or maybe in
mm,
academia was that you would be in one country and then you would go to and meet the other person. So there was kind of that like human connection that sort of
Yeah.
transcended
Mm,
cultural boundaries, and the nonverbal aspect of communication played a bit much bigger role, right? Uh,
mm,
but now in this kind of sort of like our hybrid or sort of more online reality, as a
yeah.
result, the details of what
Mm,
my message is, how to communicate, and which words I should use, we will zone in on these even more. So the understanding of the intercultural aspect and the,
mm.
upping your sort of soft skills, I think is even more important than ever.
Yeah. 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 So true. So yeah, that comes to, our second topic, yeah, because that's always the, I think, important thing, that leadership, that, let me just,
Hmm.
so yeah, you obviously work with a lot of Taiwanese companies or international companies. What's your thought, or essential soft skill do you think people need for leadership? Or anyone, if you're watching, even you're watching on archive, feel free to comment and let us know.
Yes,
It'd
please
be
do
nice to
that.
have an interactive session. But yeah, what do you think,
Oh,
Michelle?
sure. Yeah.
Mm,
Um, Interestingly, I think you have to reflect inwards before you can begin the work of looking outwards. So,
mm,
for this intercultural awareness, to understand the other groups, the other teams, the cultures, the countries you're working with, you first need to take a step back and say, okay, so what are my values? What are my expectations? What are my communication styles based on the country that I'm from, the culture that I grew up in, the industry that I'm in. And ideally, you can work with a trainer or a coach on this to understand where you're coming from so that you get what we call a sense of reflected awareness.
mm.
Reflected awareness, I think, is key, which means that you have an understanding or an awareness of how you are perceived by others.
Yeah.
So then once you have this, then we can consider this to be kind of like a foundation, right? And then after that, then everything else becomes easier because you've done the work yourself. So to try and put yourself in somebody else's shoes, to view their communication from a cultural lens, to practice empathy, to have that sort of a higher level of emotional intelligence becomes kind of like a natural progression. So when we're in workshops or we go on one-on-one trainings, I actually walk people through this 5-step
Mm.
process, beginning with yourself and then finally being able to, as the quote goes, stand in the other person's shoes.
Mm. Oh, we have Manabe-san. Thank you for your comment. Open stands for mutual communication at first. Yeah. Because I think, thank you, Michelle, for sharing that. And the challenge would be for those who, at the initial step to be aware of yourself is,
Hmm.
it's pretty challenging, isn't it? Because
Yes.
you wouldn't notice
Yeah.
unless you meet someone. That's why I always encourage young people, go abroad, study abroad when you're young, because that the shock, you know, the thing you thought that's normal in your world, even like
Hmm.
depends. Now we have generation, different generations, and the communication way. I recently asked my students, like, what's your way, like a default, social media you use? And Instagram, or like, how do you use Instagram? Like messaging, like the default is just messaging,
Yeah,
using
that's right.
Instagram.
Yeah, that's right.
Whereas, like, so different, right? If you're talking with anyone like over 40, they wouldn't be using that. They will be like, okay, what's your email address?
Yeah.
Right. So those different kind of people, like, culturally different, even you're from same country, you
Mm.
need to be aware how other people, right? Because for these people, yeah, Instagram, you don't have Instagram account, like, unless you are out of the group, you don't realize who you
Yes.
are or what's. the
Yes.
norm for you.
Yeah, so on that note, yeah, I work with a team with people from over 15 countries of all age groups, starting from 22 years old to 50. And I
Mm,
think in terms of our communication, whether we use WhatsApp for our central
mm,
communication or in meetings, is to first try to understand the assigned meaning of what that person is saying before you interpret it according to your own understanding.
mm,
So to take that extra step to really think about what the assigned meaning, the meaning behind the words, or really helps you to understand it rather than immediately judging it or comparing it to what you consider
mm,
to be correct or reality.
mm. Yeah, yeah. So true. So yeah, as leader, it's really important to be first of all aware of that soft skill that you need, right?
Yes, yes. I definitely agree. And with my work with the emotional intelligence leadership, you'll find that there are a lot of studies that show that leadership or leaders who have taken this step to
Mm,
understand themselves and then therefore they're able to understand their teams, the success rate on all parameters are just much higher than if they didn't
mm,
do that work. So that
mm,
kind of like goes along with the importance of soft skills going forward in the workplace. For example, the Global Economic Forum discussed the top 10 skills for
mm.
2025 moving
Yep.
forward. And eight of them are actually what we call soft skills, not hard skills. So they're not like
Mm,
technical ability, they're rather like your ability to think, to make analytical decisions, to brainstorm, and then to communicate with your
mm.
team. So if you have this, intercultural awareness aspect, then you'll be, miles ahead than your peers.
Yeah, so true. And because of COVID, like you mentioned earlier, these past 2 years, people, like you said, people used to travel and just need to deal one-to-one relationship. But now you
Mhm.
have to really manage international multicultural team, like,
Yeah.
oh, let's have a Zoom meeting like this time, so the American team and European team, Asia team will do all this in one go. Those so more frequently than before,
Yes.
right? And that's
Yes.
something new for those who are, first of all, not used to shift their work to digital, like digital literacy, but also have to do it internationally. So it's like
Yes.
really, really challenging, I imagine, for those
Yeah.
who have to adapt.
Yeah, for
Mm.
sure. And like for the place that we're in the world, like usually, like if you're in a multinational organization, people in our countries will be in the APAC region, right?
Mm.
But
Yeah.
if you look at the APAC region, wow, the differences, the cultural differences and the diversity and the different styles of communication is vast.
Mm-hmm.
Both Australia and Taiwan would be in that region. I'm working with a manager um, a very senior manager in Taiwan, and his manager is in Sydney, and he comes to me every week, and there are so many misunderstandings on both sides, things that his boss says, although he understands the English, he's like, what did he mean, and I have to basically like translate it for him. And then he says, well, then I said this to my boss, and then I like really didn't get any kind of reaction, and then I
Yeah.
have to like explain to him why his boss probably didn't even like get the meaning, because it was
Mm.
probably too indirect or too subtle, yeah,
Mm. Mm.
for his Sydney boss. So I find it very interesting that even like we don't even have to cross over from east to west, just like regionally, how
Yeah.
different cultures, like for example, Singapore, who would have been much more influenced by their colonial past, like how would that influence their communication style compared to, another region. So all of these things, like if you really take a step back and look into the details, there's so much to learn.
Exactly. And that story reminds me that how much people rely on just speaking English, right?
Yes.
Oh, we
Yes.
speak the same language. And that's the same in Japan. Like I used to, before Australia, living in Australia, I used to live in UK, and I used to do the training, intercultural training, teaching American people how to work with British people.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
you think they're speaking the same language, but behind,
Very
totally
different.
different. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the same. When I moved to Australia, I thought, oh, this is actually my first time moving, from the country, English speaking country, to another English speaking country. But it's so different.
Yes.
It still like takes me a lot of time to adjusting. And oh, thank you, Basa. Thank you for coming. Mm. And Manabe-san saying acceptance for emotional intention will be important skill. Yeah, accepting. So emotion,
I think
I guess. What do you
I
think?
think it's an important skill and talent.
Mm,
Um, I think those two are very tied up. Yeah, this is a very good question.
mm,
If I'm understanding it right, I think for you to understand the true meaning of what the other person is trying to say, to try to kind
mm,
of like get below the surface and
mm.
feel the message is
Yeah.
a talent that you need because if you are working with as we're kind of talking about like different englishes, right? Like
Mm,
Australian
mm,
English will be different from the UK English to the Japanese English to, so if we're all communicating using the same language and the meaning might be slightly different, or even if the meaning sounds the same, what is the interpretation behind it? So yeah, you would definitely need this acceptance, but even before the acceptance you would need the ability to interpret it correctly, to understand it.
mm,
So this is definitely something that is a skill that I'm still working on. I think we can all continue to work on this throughout our lives. What do you
mm.
think, Ray?
Yeah, it's the good thing is the skill can be acquired.
Yes.
It's not like you were
Yes.
born with it. And it's the good thing is, yeah, any age, any time of the life, if you want to understand and communicate, if you decide that, it's totally doable. So let's
Mhm.
let's get this awareness and work on, so that will lead to the world peace, isn't it, Michelle?
I hope so. We definitely need that right now, right? For
Yeah,
sure.
totally. That's really, that's what we need. The skill we know, and try to understand other people, because we are all
Mhm.
different, right?
Mhm.
And by speaking English now, it's good. We can communicate. But
Mhm.
the intention behind that, we are all human being. And there's good people, there's bad people, but if all of us try to understand each other,
Yes.
you know that will
Yes.
help make this world better place, isn't
Yes.
it?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And as I mentioned earlier, like the more personal reflection, the more inner work you can do, whether it is, from a cultural perspective or like whether it's EQ or CQ, whatever Q it is,
Mm.
um, that will be of great benefit. So I think a lot of times in leadership, or just in communication, even if you're just being part of a team is also a form of leadership. You don't have to necessarily be the leader. um,
Mm,
it seems as though the strength or the talent lies in the moment of the decision or in the moment of the communication, but actually I think it's in how you live your life. It's how you develop yourself, what you
mm,
access, how what you read, what you take in, how you try to develop yourself,
mm,
what skills you work on in your own time. All of these things that are non-tangible will accumulate into in that moment how you are able to receive, interpret, and respond to another person.
mm. Yeah, so thank you so much, everyone, for commenting. If you have any questions to Michelle or myself, yeah, feel free to comment. Yeah, so any tips before we go? Like, if anyone like working with, if for Asian people working with, Western people, or vice versa. One tip, shall we share? Michelle, can
Okay.
you come up with one?
Sure. I would say keep an open mind, uh, do your homework, stay curious, and show empathy. And no
Hmm.
matter what culture you're working with, those are the skills that will help you to go over the bridge.
So true. And I have to say, yeah, empathy is so important. And to me, yeah, if as Asian, as a Japanese person, like communicating using English, like not my first language to be in the international, like a global environment. I know there are few challenges for Japanese or maybe Asian people is we need to practice, form our ideas and be able to speak,
Yes,
that's the challenging thing for us. As
okay.
Asian, we are kind of get used to listen and
Yes,
respect, and so that kind of thing. Yeah, open minded, and yeah. So don't worry about English. If your attitude, if you want to understand other people can tell that you want to
just go for it.
communicate. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really important, Ray. Having worked with people in Japan and Taiwan, my first suggestion is focus more on just communicating, focus on your confidence, and don't worry about, the
Mm,
grammar structure or being perfect or anything like that. Just do it.
mm. Yeah, just do it.
Yeah.
Let's do
Yeah.
it. So that was our first session of bridging the East and West. And hope you guys enjoyed it or find something useful. And we'll see you next time. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. See you next
よろしくお願
time.
いします。
ありがとうございまし
ありが
た。
とうござい
再
ます。
见. See you
再
next
见，
time.
晚安，拜
Bye. 晚
拜。
安。